Good afternoon, grade 12s. Welcome once again to Hospitality Studies. My name is Ms. Nompumelelo Zulu and I come from Buffalo City Metro in the Eastern Cape. Today we are going to be looking at the topic preparing venues and setting tables for formal four-course dinners. Now this topic you'll cover in your classroom during term 1 in week 4. And it basically is assessed under section D, which is question 6 of your examination paper. Under this topic, we are going to look at the following: the importance of a restaurant environment, opening mise-en-place, preparing the venue, special equipment, cleaning and caring for the equipment. We will then look at the different types of components under linen, cutlery, crockery, glassware, condiments, menu cards, as well as table numbers. And then finally, we'll look at table setting as well as go through a few activities so that you can understand how this topic will be assessed. Now, grade 12s, let us look at the general restaurant environment. A restaurant's atmosphere sets the stage. It's about more than just the dining room away from home. We are all well aware that food takes the spotlight as guests become its audience. However, factors such as music, lighting, artwork, and spacing combine to create comfort while visiting the establishment. Interior design as well as decor should blend with the theme of the restaurant. Your furniture should emphasize the character of the restaurant. Using different types of lighting, for example, candles, low lighting or natural light, enhances the ambience in the establishment. The restaurant, it is important that it must be well ventilated. Let us now look at setting up your venue. This will include setting up your tables, your chairs, as well as other large equipment that you'd use for that day. This will also involve doing mise-en-place of your small equipment. We'll discuss fully what this mise-en-place entails. Setting up of your covers according to the number of guests that have booked, and also allowing walk-in guests who have not made a booking space to have if they do visit your establishment. Setting up of your service areas, and this will also depend on the type of meal that you'll be serving on that day. If you require service equipment that you would have to make ready before the guest actually arrives. Preparations that are necessary for any special requirements required by the guests. Now remember that when the guest makes a booking, there are other guests or some guests that will make special requests. Maybe this particular guest has got a birthday party and they don't require small tables of 4, but they require a long table too, so that all their guests sit in one table. You might have a guest that's visiting your establishment that has a small child and they require a baby chair, or you might have a guest that is a solitary diner, which means it's a guest that's on their own, so they want to be away from all the tables. That is a special requirement. Or you might have a guest maybe that is in a wheelchair, and that means that you would have to remove the chair and allow space for the wheelchair to be able to fit in before the guests arrive. These are just pictures of now when you set up the venue before the guest actually arrive. You don't want when the guest comes and then you still are busy. Now in the previous slide, the second bullet spoke about mise-en-place. So this is content that you were taught in grade 10. That was your basic knowledge that you learned from grade 10, but I would just remind you and reinforce it because it's very, very important in grade 12 to be able to understand what is mise-en-place, especially because in grade 12 we zoom into opening mise-en-place as well as closing mise-en-place, and both are equally important for you to master and understand and be able to respond to the questions correctly on which type of mise-en-place will be asked at that particular time. So mise-en-place is a French term which means to put in place. There are some textbooks which refer to mise-en-place as pre-preparation. So remember, when you were taught this topic in grade 10, it was referring to the kitchen. So it was always pre-preparation of your ingredients before cooking. But in this instance, we are looking at it under the umbrella of food and beverage. So it is to put in place or the actual work that you do before in the restaurant. So you will do it before the guest actually arrives. That means that everything should be in its place at the right position in the correct way. It is also referred as preliminary preparation, which includes getting ready both the food as well as the beverage equipment and surroundings so that the serving of the food and beverage can be carried out efficiently. It is also described as performing mise-en-place means keeping ready in advance the customer's arrival in the restaurant. But basically, in short terms, it is making sure that everything is ready before the guests arrive and that you're not running around between the restaurant and the kitchen trying to organize yourself when the guests arrive. Okay, so when the guests arrive, the ambience of the restaurant is set, all the covers are set, and you are ready to receive and to then start with service. Now I've got a first picture here, and as you can see, it is a waiter that is cleaning or polishing glasses. You will not do this action when the guest is already there, so it is what you will do before the guests arrive, hence we call it mise-en-place. Here in the next picture, you see the waiter is actually placing the cutlery on the table, which is setting up the cover. Now, grade 12s, I must also highlight at this point in time that this topic must also be implemented during your practical assessment task. So it is not only a topic that you must master for your examination and your test during the year, but these skills must also be implemented during your practical exam in the 3rd term. Let us continue with opening mise-en-place in the restaurant. So the first thing that you would do is to clean your restaurant. This involves brushing and dusting tables and chairs. The guest must not arrive and there's dust everywhere, or there is leftover food droppings from the previous meal or serviettes on the floor. So you must make sure that the area is cleaned, as well as the polishing of the sideboards. Now, the word sideboards, we will zoom into it in the slides that are going to follow. Secondly, you would then prepare your linen. Now, remember, when we refer to linen, we refer to 3 types. We refer to your tablecloths that you will place on your table once you have cleaned your tables and polished them. It is your overlay that goes on top of your tablecloth, as well as your serviette, your napkins, your cloth napkins that you'll place on the guest cover. Now, how do you prepare these before the guests arrive as your opening mise-en-place? You collect all your dirty linen from the previous meal and you get them exchanged from housekeeping. Now, housekeeping will give you clean linen as well as spare linen, which you will keep on the waiter's station. Now, you always have to have your spare linen, so in the case of accidents that happen, that you are not now running to housekeeping during service, you can just go into your sideboard and take out another set of clean linen to be able to place them on the guest table. Thirdly, for opening mise-en-place, you would have to then prepare your cutlery. This means cleaning and wiping all cutlery and keeping them in their respective slots in the waiter's station. That means washing of all your cutlery as well as polishing it, and then obviously that is what you'll be using on your cover. But again, just like the linen, you need to have extra cutlery on or inside your sideboard or your waiter's side station. Then fourthly, you will have your crockery, where you collect all your crockery from dishwashing, from the kitchen. You'll make sure that it is all wiped properly and it's clean, it's got no watermarks, and you ensure this by using a moist cloth and then also using a dry cloth. Then we have our accompaniments. You need to ensure that you check all the accompaniments. You make sure that they are available as required by the restaurant staff. For example, your tomato sauce must be available. You must make sure that it is filled. Your chili sauce, vinegar and pickles, etc. Serving dispensers to be refilled and kept on the table or on the sideboard, including your cruet sets. Now, this element of accompaniments, we will also discuss it further on into the slide so that you can have a full understanding. Then your sideboards or your cupboards. Now, I've got their cupboards as slashed with sideboards because in some restaurants they do not use sideboards anymore and they use cupboards. In your instance, in your school, when you do your practical exam, you might not have a sideboard, but you'll have cupboards next to your tables. So you must make sure that these areas must be kept, the items must be kept on the sideboard after proper cleaning and wiping. Now, what items must be on the sideboard? I've already alluded in the previous slides that you need to have your linen, so your extra tablecloths, as well as your serviettes, as well as your overlays. You need to have extra cutlery, crockery, your service trays, your soup ladles, bread baskets, writing pads, and if you are using the service style grid-on service, then you need to have all your grid-on equipment. Now, when I look at the grid-on trolley, I will then further unpack to you what this grid-on equipment is all about. Now, let us look at the waiter's station in depth. What is a waiter's station? I've mentioned in the previous slide that there are some establishments, and even in the case of schools, that might not have a waiter's side station, but they can have a table that they use to store the equipment for service. So a definition is a cloth table or a special sideboard equipped with shelves with cutlery, crockery, glassware, service utensils, linen, tea and coffee equipment, bread service equipment, table accompaniments, condiments, as well as the waiter's necessities that are placed there. Now, I've got a few pictures. This is your waiter's station. As you can see, this particular one has got the shelves and it's got the cupboard, and then it's got, you can see there, I hope you can actually see, this is your crockery. You've got your soup bowls there, you've got your dinner plates, as well as your side plates, and at the top there you've got a drawer with all the cutlery, and on top of the sideboard, I'm not sure if you can see there, you've got your menus and your table numbers. I've also got a picture here. This is your notepad, so when you are writing your orders for the guests, your service cloth will be there, your corkscrew if a guest does order wine and you need to open the bottle of wine for them, your pen obviously to jot down the orders, your matches. If, for example, you have candles on the table, you will need to have matches on your waiter station so that you can light up the candles. If you are obviously performing the grid-on service, when you need to light the gas, you will need to have the matches. Okay, this is another picture of a wine opener or a corkscrew or a waiter's friend. And then this is the billfolds that will be placed on your waiter's station. The mise-en-place that you perform in the bar, that will entail cleaning the bar counter as well as the cupboards, checking that you have enough stock. If you don't have enough stock, you bring the stock from the stores, cleaning and neatly arranging the glassware on your bar, cleaning cocktail equipment and displaying them properly on the counter, preparing all the items for garnishes as well as your accompaniments. That means that you are slicing your lemons and you are maybe preparing your orange garnishes, you are skewing in your cherries onto your toothpicks, whatever case may be in terms of your garnishes, chilling the wines, beers, soft drinks. It's very, very important that you do not only go to the storeroom to get the soft drinks or whatever the guest has ordered and the guest gets the beverages hot. So it's important that prior to the guest's arrival, hence we call it opening mise-en-place, that you do make sure that you place your wines, your beers, soft drinks in the fridge so that you serve them at the correct temperature. Displaying all the liquor properly in the display racks, as well as also you will then perform your miscellaneous opening mise-en-place. That is basically preparing all the tables for service with the proper layout. This is just a picture for you of a bar where you can clearly see that all the drinks, like I've mentioned now, have been laid out and displayed properly for the guests, and you've got your glassware there, and the guest is actually already, or the waiter, the barman is already preparing his first drink there. Part of mise-en-place is also setting up your special equipment. These include the following special equipment. Firstly, your carving unit. This is the area where you would cut or slice your joints of meat, your leg of lambs, your gammons, your roast beefs. On the carving unit. Now this needs to be cleaned prior to the guest's arrival or prior to even the joints placed on the carving unit. Then you have your bain-marie. Now your bain-marie, remember, must be linked, or it must be attached to an electricity supply, and you would have to warm the water before the food is placed. You do not place hot food on cold water, so the bain-marie needs to be warmed before service so that the food that is taken from the kitchen, it is placed into a bain-marie that has been preheated. Your chafing dishes. Remember, just to go back a little bit, you need to make a distinction. You need to know the differences between a bain-marie and a chafing dishes. Yes, both of them are for warming food, but the bain-marie, like I mentioned, it needs to be plugged into electricity, and the chafing dish uses a flammable gel. At the bottom here, I'm going to just put my magnifier on, or my highlighter. Here you've got your flammable gel. You also have the inserts. This is where the food will go, but underneath the inserts you have the area where you will put your water. Then you would light your gel, and then the water will heat up, and then the food will go there. You've got your cold holding area. This is where you'll put your salads as well as your desserts. So these need to be prepared ahead of time. So you would put your ice, you'd make sure the area is clean first, and then you put your ice for your salads. The freezers will have to be turned on where you will put your ice cream, or they'll have to also be cleaned. Now on the Gordon trolley, this is the time now that I discuss it more in depth. Now remember, the Gordon trolley is where you would prepare your items that need to be flambéed. For example, your crepe Suzettes, or your fillet mignon. So you set it alight. That is a new term that you just need to learn, which is flambe, which means to set alight. Now your Goujon trolley, here at the top you have your gas. So inside the cupboard will be your gas cylinder. On this part of the Goujon trolley, that is where you would put your alcohol that you'd use to set alight. And then underneath here you would have your plates, you will have your pan that you would use on the gas. Okay, let me just switch this one off. Your serving equipment, these will be, for example, your tureens. This is where you would place your soups. If you'll be serving soup on that particular day, you're serving platters. Remember your cold holding equipment that you put your ice on, or you switch it on to get nice and cool. So the food will be on your platters and then they are placed onto the buffet. Your sauce boards will have to be ready, and you would normally also find these especially in your carving units. You will then need to also make sure that your coffee pots, your teapots, your milk jugs, as well as your sugar bowls are clean, they are filled, and they are placed on your waiter's side station or sideboard or cupboard. Your cruet sets, which refers to your salt and pepper, they will need to be filled and cleaned and wiped down so it doesn't have any dirt or watermarks on them. And then they do actually have the salt and pepper. Your pepper grinders, you'll also just make sure that there's enough peppercorns inside, that they are wiped clean, and they are on your waiter's station. Your cloches as well, that you'd have to make sure that they are washed and they are cleaned and they are polished. In terms of your cutlery, which serve as your serving utensils, these include your serving spoons, your tongs, your carving knives and carving forks that you'd use in your carving unit, your soup ladles to go with your serving equipment that I just spoke about, your teaspoons for your tea and coffee, your butter knives, cheese knives, main course forks and knives, fish forks and knives. They would have to also be well and ready as your opening mise-en-place. I have just got some few pictures here for you of the different cutlery that you would use. Now to continue, your linen, remember before I explained to you the 3 types of linen that we have, that you've got your tablecloth, you've got your overlay, as well as your napkins. So you must make sure that those are ready, they are clean. We will discuss much later on how you make sure that they are well to be placed on the table. Your crockery then entails your dinner plates, your side plates, your serving platters, your cups and your sauces, etc. Your cutlery there, I've just spoken about it in a few minutes ago. And then it will be your glassware on the table with your covers. You would normally have your white wine and your red wine glasses, as well as sometimes you would also need to place your water glass. Now, grade 12s, how do you make sure that these items are cleaned? How do you care for these items, whether it is your equipment or it is your utensils that you would use before you set your table? You need to make sure that all equipment is cleaned and polished. It is also important that you do not clean any tableware in the presence of the guest. Now, cleaning means washing in hot soapy water. That is the first important thing. You will then rinse them in clean hot water. Then you would air dry it, okay, or polish using a clean cloth. Now, that is very, very important for you to remember. It sometimes happens that after you've washed your equipment that there are still water stains. If that is the case, and this is mostly found when you are using your glassware, then it is important that you dip the glassware in hot water, or your cutlery. Sometimes the cutlery might have the water stains. You will dip in hot water and you polish with the clean, dry cloth. This is an illustration of a waiter that is actually polishing his glasses using a clean cloth. And the second picture, you have the waiter that is polishing the cutlery. Now your glassware. Glassware must be handled with care. It is important that glasses must be steamed over a boil of boiling water. Then you polish using a clean, dry cloth. Okay, I've got an illustration there. If you in your school situation, for example, you can just place a pot on a stove, and once the water starts boiling, then you would then take the glass over into the hot water, into the steam, and then you would polish using a clean cloth. And I've just got a next picture here to show you, that shows you how must you hold the glass as you are steaming, to make sure that your fingerprints do not stay, or you do not leave any fingerprints onto the glass. So it's important to also note that the glasses must be carried by the stem or at the base, as you can see in this picture. Can you see that the service cloth is covering both the base as well as the glass itself, that you are not leaving any finger marks when you are polishing the glass? Okay, and then you would obviously, this is just an illustration that you would use a service cloth when you are polishing your glasses. Cutlery and other silverware should look shiny and bright. It's important that you must use a dishcloth or a service cloth to handle the cutlery after polishing, to prevent your finger marks, just like the glasses. Okay, the picture here then shows you that at no particular point must you place your fingers onto the cutlery. There is also another picture that illustrates that very nicely. Your crockery must be handled carefully. Do not stack it too high, and you must keep the spouts of the tea and coffee pot turned inwards and pointing in the same direction. This just avoids accidents, that if it's placing towards the person, maybe as they are moving, they might just move it a bit, and it might cause accidents or breakage of equipment. The illustration there just shows us that you must not stack them too high, as you might have seen in the past that they become too wobbly and they might just fall, and that will cause a damage to your equipment. The next picture just shows you how you should stack them. If you compare it to the previous picture, where you can see the height is very high of how they've stacked the crockery, and the one on the right hand side, it is actually packed at a reasonable height. Your linen, napkins, tablecloths, overlays and service cloths, they must be clean with no food stains or wax from candles. If it has got food stains, you must replace it. They should not be burnt, shabby or worn out. If they are, they must be replaced. They must be well ironed with only one center fold visible on the tablecloth. There must not be too many creases on it. Make sure that the tablecloth is not upside down, even the overlay, and it should hang evenly from all sides of the table. And this is something that you would correct during your opening mise-en-place if it is not right. Serviettes are an essential part of decorations. it's important to note that you must handle them as little as possible, because if you overhandle them, it becomes a hygienic risk. Now, serviettes add height and color to the cover, and then napkins or linen serviettes, they display an elegance. It just elevates the elegance of the cover, where you compare it, if you compare it to your paper serviettes, which are less formal. Okay, these are just pictures of your napkins or your linen serviettes. Then your condiments, which include your salt and pepper, your chili flakes, your mayonnaise, your chutney, your tomato sauce, your mustards. The containers must be cleaned and they must be refilled daily. When we come to our table numbers as well as table decoration, you must make sure that they must be large enough to be seen, and they need to point towards the entrance. You don't want guests coming into the restaurant and not being able to find their tables because the table numbers are facing away from the entrance. It also assists the waiters, because remember, the guests are greeted at the reception of the restaurant or at the entrance by the maitre d' hotel or the manager in charge, and that manager, as much as there is a table set up where they will know that this guest that has booked into the restaurant has been allocated table number 5, but when the restaurant becomes busy, they might not be able to see the table if the table number is not facing towards the entrance. I have in the first picture there is our table number. For example, I've got the table number 1. It should contribute to the theme but not hamper the vision of the guest. That is very, very important. So in other words, they must not be too high that the guests that are sitting across one another, that they cannot see each other. So they must not be too high. The theme of the table decoration should be appropriate for the type of function, and it must blend with the rest of the decor. In this instance, if you look at our 3 pictures, they all blend well together, which means that the theme of this particular function or this particular restaurant setup was earthy and green colors. So you must make sure that your table decoration do actually blend and they are not out of place or out of contrast. And then in terms of the flowers, the tablecloth and the serviettes, they should also blend very well with the theme. When it comes to your menu cards, you must remember that menu cards' function is to complement the decor. It must be correct for the meal being served. So in other words, if it is dinner, the menu must be a dinner menu. If it's a breakfast, it must be a breakfast menu and not vice versa. The menu must be correctly written, and you have learned this in grade 10 as well as in grade 11 on what is the right way or what is the correct procedure on writing out the menu. Pleasing to look at, it must be easy to handle, it must be clean, as well as it must be undamaged. Menu items will determine the cutlery to be used for each cover. So that's why it's important that you must have the correct menu, because the waiters will be able to set the covers according to the menu. I've got a first example there of a formal dinner menu, and this is how it is correctly written. In this instance, the menu that I have just displayed now has been incorrectly written if you compare it to the previous menu. Now, if we just take a quick glance at the 2 menus, why do I say the menu on the right has been incorrectly written if you compare it to the previous menu? Now, let's look at the first menu. The most important thing is that the word menu must be in capital letters, which is now the same case for both of these menus. You must be able to see the different types of courses. So for example, you've got your hors d'oeuvre, your starter, your main course, your dessert. Whereas the menu on the right hand side, you cannot see the division, you cannot see the different courses. Okay, there must be each word of the menu or each dish must start with the capital letters except for ands and the with. Okay, so in the menu on the left has got that, as well as the menu on the right, so that part is correct. Then you've got your date. The date is very, very important, that it must be on your menu, whereas on the menu on the right hand side there is no date. Now let's look at setting tables. So we've gone through your opening mise-en-place, everything that you do before the guests arrive, your pre-preparation, whether it is in the restaurant, for the bar, for the equipment, for your cutlery, etc. Having your table decorations ready, having your table numbers ready, also having the menu to be correct and it is ready. Now you can start setting the table. The number of guests booking will determine the layout of your restaurant covers. Now, a place setting at a table for one guest, that is what you call a cover. It is a place setting for one guest. It must be confirmed with the person in charge, and you set the tables according to this. Now, this is just an example of what a table booking will look like. You will have the full name of the guest, okay, his email address, his phone number, and the number of guests that will be coming, and then what date is the reservation for, and what time are they planning to arrive at the restaurant. Now, once all this information is ready, you need to position the tables and the chairs so that the guests and staff can move freely, because you do not want excuse me throughout the whole meal, between the guests who want to maybe stand up and visit the powder rooms, or the waiters that are moving between the guests during service. You line up and place tables in a particular pattern to ensure that the legs are standing evenly. You position your chairs so that they are parallel to the table with a small distance away from the edge of the table. Waiters must be able to move around easily. Here is an example of what I have just explained. Now I'm going to take you through table setting for a 4-course cover. Now remember, we said that a cover is a place setting for one person. So in grade 12, we deal with 4-course dinner menus or 4-course lunch menus. So you must be able to not only respond to this question in the question paper, but you must be able to also set a 4-course cover during your practical assessment task. Now I'm going to take you through a few of the main criteria or a few things that are very, very important for you to note. The first one being that you must always lay the utensils from the inside first, working your way to the outside. Okay, so it's inside first, working your way outside. On the right hand side, it's inside first, working your way to the outside. In terms of the cutlery, you must position the main course knife and fork 1 centimeter to 2.5 centimeters from the edge of the table. I'm going to put my pointer so I can show you. So the distance from the edge of the table must be between 1 centimeters to 2.5 centimeters. There must also be 25 to 29 centimeters between the knife. Okay, so in other words, in this space here, there must be between 25 to 29 centimeters between the knife on the right hand side as well as the fork on the left hand side. It's also important for you to note that the blades of the knife, okay, must always face to the left. All other cutlery required for the menu on the table must be outside the main course knife and fork. Okay, so that is, for example, this knife here, which is your fish knife, and then your fish fork here. So we said you start from the inside, working your way outside. All right, that's very, very important, boys and girls. Now you place your dessert spoon and fork across the top of the cover. There you have your dessert fork, and then you have your dessert spoon at the top there. Now with regards to the glasses, you must set both the red and white wine glasses 2.5 centimeters from the tip of the main course knife. Okay, and then your side plates. Here's your side plate here. It has your bread knife. It must be on the left of the cover firstly, as well as next to the forks. Your napkin, which must be at the center of the cover, and then you place all other table decorations, for example your flower, your centerpieces. It can be like, for example here we've got a centerpiece. It could also be flowers, and then you have your menu as well as your table numbers. In this regard, this menu here is actually dual. You've got the table number on the front, and on the side, which you can't see, you have your menu. Okay. Okay, boys and girls, we've come to the end of our lesson on venue setup as well as table setting. I just want to take you through a few activities as well as samples from previous question papers, so that you can have a basic idea of how this topic will be assessed. Let's look, for example, at this cover, where you are, for example, asked to evaluate the correctness, right? Remember what I've just taught you now about setting a cover correctly. Then you need to then, in an exam question paper, evaluate the correctness. Okay, and you first importantly have to look at the cover. Remember the 6 points that I discussed with you, and then you can then start to respond. So in this instance, you would respond by saying the cutlery is not 1 centimeter to 2 centimeters from the edge of the table. I'm going to put my pointer on again. As you can see, there is a lot of space between the cutlery and the edge of the table. Even your side plate is too high up on the left side of the cover. You can also say there is no 25 to 29 centimeters between the knife on the right and the fork on the left. Remember, we said there must be a distance or between 25 to 29 centimeters between this fork and this knife. The napkin is incorrectly placed. We said that the napkin, which is here on the side plate, must be at the center of the cover. Then you can also respond by saying the bread knife is not placed correctly and it is not aligned to the cutlery. Remember, we said that the bread knife, firstly, it must just move just a little bit towards the right hand side, and it needs to be aligned to the main course fork. There is also on this table no overlay. You can also add that there's too much distance between the dessert spoon and the dessert fork, and the wine glasses are not at 2.5 centimeters. Also, there is no table decorations, there is no menu, and there are no table numbers. Those are also things that you can actually add as well to your response. This is another example where you are also once again asked to evaluate the correctness of the cover. As you can also see, it is a little bit different to the cover that I've just displayed now on the slides. So again here, you'd have to look at the cover, remember the important criteria or elements or rules when you are setting a cover, and thereafter you would then respond. This is what basically would be your response. Firstly, the bread plate is in the incorrect position. I'm going to put my laser on again. The bread plate is in the incorrect position. Remember, when I was teaching you about table setting, we said that the side plate or the bread plate must be on the left-hand side of the cover, and then you must have your bread knife. You can add that to that response. Secondly, only one wine glass is in place. Here you've just got your wine glass and your water glass, so they should be the second wine glass. Your soup spoon is incorrect. If you look at the soup spoon here, luckily this cover is labeled. So if you look at this soup spoon, we know that the soup spoon must be more rounded, and this looks more or less like a dessert spoon. Then the dinner plate is placed on the cover, and we know that because it's a 4-course meal, that it will be plate service. That means that the dishes are going to already come from the kitchen already plated, so there is no need of having the the dinner plate on the cover. Here you should be replaced by the napkin. So the napkin, you can also add, is not on the cover. And then you can also respond by saying there is no salad knife on the cover. As you can see here on the left hand side, there is a salad fork, so there should be a salad knife, which would have come after the main course knife, so that is not present. And then also it says there the dessert spoon is incorrect. Yes, this looks more like a teaspoon, so we know that you need a dessert spoon, and that does not look like a dessert spoon at all. You can also add here, if you look at this cover, and if we can assume that this is the edge of the table, then we will know that there is not that 1 centimeters to 2.5 centimeters from the edge of the table. Okay, let us move on to an example of a question that was set in the NSC November examination in 2021. Now remember, I told you that this section forms part of question 6. So here the examiners have given you 2 pictures, and they ask you to study the pictures A and B below and answer the questions that follow. So you need to carefully look at the pictures, and then the question says, identify the equipment in A and B for 2 marks, which means that each picture is awarded 1 mark. And this is how you would respond. Picture A is a bain-marie, and picture B is a chafing dish. The follow-up question says, compare equipment A and B. Tabulate the answer as follows in your answer book. So equipment A and B. So now this means that if you did not get A right and B right, you are going to get the comparison also wrong. So please, boys and girls, look carefully at the picture. We know that I'm just going to quickly just go through it again before we look at the answers that are expected from you. As you can see in the picture, just remember, the moment they are flammable, or you can see but you can see this dish here, it means that there's going to be a gel that is inside. Obviously you put it on, and then the heat will transfer to the chafing dish, and it'll warm up the food. Whereas in this picture on A, you cannot see that. That means that it is plugged in electricity. So remember the 2 distinctions. The bain-marie is plugged in electricity, and then the chafing dish uses a flammable gel. So please know this, so that you'll be able to get the full marks, which is 4 marks for the comparison. Now I have put all the responses, so for the learners on how they would respond. So this is what you would say. Now remember, you're making a comparison. So comparison means, what does the one not have with which the other one has? So, but remember, basically both equipment are used to heat up food or to keep food warm. So that is a similarity. That is what they are common for. But the differences are, one, the bain-marie uses steam from boiling water, electricity or gas, whereas equipment B, which is our chafing dish, uses steam from boiling water created by wax candles or flammable gel, or some learners can say spirit burners. Okay. Then another comparison is that the bain-marie has a deep and shallow insert, or it is bigger in volume, whereas the chafing dish has got shallow inserts or containers, and it has a smaller volume. And then if you continue, the bain-marie has got flat lids on containers, whereas the chafing dish has got the dome-shaped lids. With the bain-marie, it is used on a countertop or built in a serving area or in the kitchen counter, whereas the chafing dish is used on a buffet table in the serving area. And then the bain-marie is difficult to move because it is heavy, and then the chafing dish can be moved. It is portable. You can take it to different areas where it is needed because it is lighter. And then the bain-marie is more expensive to purchase, whereas a chafing dish is less expensive to purchase. Okay, let us look at an example from the November 22 question paper. In this paper, you are asked to study the picture and then answer the questions that follow. So now grade 12, it's very important that before you even attempt to answer the question or even to read the question, you need to look at the picture and you need to start thinking about a cover and what are the elements or what are important things to remember when you're setting a cover, and thereafter you can look at the question. Now let us look at the question. The question reads, judge the accuracy of the cover according to the placement of A, the cutlery for 3 marks, and then B, the crockery for 2 marks. Now this is how you would be expected to respond. The cover is incorrect, or you can say it is wrong. You will then need to tell us why it is wrong. It is wrong because, one, I'm just going to put my my pointer on. The knives are on the left-hand side and the forks are on the right-hand side. So in other words, they've been swapped around. We know that the forks must be on the left and the knife must be on the right for 1 mark. You can also add that the spoon is also in the wrong position. It should be on the right. You can also add that there is no entree knife to accompany the entree fork. Now, remember that this knife is for the main course fork. That means that this fork should be accompanied by its own fork, which will be your entree or your salad fork and stuff. So it is missing from there. Okay, the blade of the knife, okay, if you can see here, it is facing the wrong direction. You can also add that there is no dessert fork. Okay, and also the dessert spoon is facing, or it is placed incorrectly. It is facing the wrong direction. You can also add that both the knives and the forks are not in the correct distance from the edge of the table, assuming that this was the edge of the table, and I have taught you that they should be 1 to 2.5 centimeters from the table, from the edge of the table. Okay, and then there is no bread or entree knife on the side plate. Now, okay, now forget about the fact at this point in time that the side plate has been placed incorrectly. We must now remember the question has asked us to judge the accuracy of the cutlery. The side plate is the crockery, but there is no bread knife on the side plate, so that is where you would end off. You will then conclude about the side plate in the follow-up question, which is B. Now the follow-up question, remember B, still asked you to judge the accuracy, but now of the crockery. So you would respond by saying it is incorrect, or you can say it is wrong for 1 mark. Then you must now provide reasons. Why do you say so? Firstly, the side plate is placed in the incorrect place. It should be on the left-hand side of the cover. Remember, in the previous answer, we were referring to the bread knife on the side plate, but now it's the crockery. And then secondly, the plate or the entree or dinner plate should not be on the cover, another mark to get the 2 marks. Now, remember we said that at the center of the cover, it must be the napkin. But there are other instances where there are some covers where you have the underplate and then you'd have your napkin or your serviette on top of it, okay? That is not a plate. So the underplate is still allowed, but you do not place the plates themselves on the cover. Okay, let us look at the next question, which is still referring to that cover, but now we are not now judging the accuracy of the placement of the cutlery or the crockery. The question reads, comment on the overall appearance of the napkin in the cover. This is how you would respond for 2 marks. It is good, okay, or you can say it is elegant, you can say it is neat or formal for 1 mark, and then you can further add on and say the napkin is clean, it's got no food stain, wax or burnt marks, the napkin is well ironed, it has got no creases, it is not over handled, and then you can also say the napkin does not look shabby or torn or worn out, and then the napkin is neatly folded. So you are taking what I've taught you on how you would treat or how your tablecloths and your overlay and your serviettes must be handled, or they must be, and you would then refer it to the picture. If by any instance the picture had stains or burnt marks, or it was not ironed, you would then say it is not a good appearance because it is not ironed, it's got stains and burnt marks, or it has been untidily folded, etc. Okay, so that napkin in that picture looks really, really good. Okay, let us now look at the next question paper. This is the May-June 2021 sample of question 6. The question reads, study the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. Okay, the scenario reads, the restaurant opening mise-en-place refers to preparing equipment, cutlery, crockery, glasses, and linen before the next meal is served. Then the question reads, explain the procedure of cleaning tableware for a formal 4-course dinner for 2 marks. And this is how you would be expected to respond. You wash in clean, hot, soapy water. You rinse in clean, hot water. You air dry and polish with a clean cloth. And if stains are still present, you dip in hot water and you polish with a clean, dry cloth. And that is how you'd get your 2 marks. Okay, let us look at the next question, which is still continuing from that question sample. 6.2.2 reads, list the aspects to consider when visually designing menus for 3 marks. And this is how you'd be expected to respond. Menu cards should be durable, attractive, or be on themed paper. 2, make sure that the type of font and size suits the event. 3, it must be easy to read. 4, correctly written in the correct format. Okay, just like I've spoken about how to correctly write a menu. And then lastly, it must be pleasing to look at, it must be creative, as well as easy to handle. Any three of those. And the next question reads, discuss the requirements of table linen when setting tables. Now remember, what did we say? We said linen are three things. It is a tablecloth, the overlay, as well as the napkin. Okay, so what are those important requirements? Firstly, the choice of linen should match the choice of the menu. The linen must complement the theme of the meal or the decor. The linen must be clean. It must have no wax stains or food stains or burnt marks. The tablecloth should be well ironed with only the one centerfold that is visible. The linen must hang evenly from each side of the table, as well as lastly, the linen should not be upside down. Okay. That brings us to the end of our lesson today. Thank you so much, grade 12s, for listening in, and I trust that this lesson has helped you to reinforce what you have been taught in your class by your class teacher. Thank you very much. Please remember to like, to comment, to subscribe, and to share the link, our YouTube channel, which is titled ECDOE Hospitality Studies. I will see you once again in the next video.